We've heard a lot of rumors swirling right now. Seem to be scrambling for information about what happened, just like everyone else.
Rivals start to move in, and it gets extremely bloody. You will see people hanging from overpasses, beheadings.
Americans are being urged to exercise caution while in Mexico. This, of course, following the arrest of Mayo last week in Santa Teresa, one of the Sinaloa drug cartel's top leaders and alleged co-founders.
If I was a betting man, I'd bet on him getting away with this.
What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into a critical and developing situation that's making headlines across the globe. The violent aftermath of Ismael El Mayo Zambada's arrest, a legendary leader of the Sinaloa Cartel. Fresh news is emerging that the Sinaloa Cartel is now actively seeking revenge for El Mayo's capture. They're reportedly targeting anyone they believe to be connected to his arrest, leading to a surge in violence across Mexico. But the burning question on everyone's mind is, could this conflict spill over into the United States? To put this into perspective, we need to look back at recent history. The last time the Sinaloa Cartel faced major leadership turmoil, entire towns were transformed into war zones. We're seeing signs that history might be repeating itself, but potentially on an even larger scale. This isn't just another cartel bust. There's a chilling development brewing in Mexico that demands our attention. Reports suggest at least 10 murders, possibly more, are directly linked to El Mayo's capture, and this might just be the tip of the iceberg. Today, we'll examine the current situation, explore its potential ramifications, and draw parallels with past events to give you a comprehensive understanding of what might lie ahead. We'll also discuss the implications for Mexico and the United States and what this means for border security and civilian safety. So buckle up as we delve into this complex and dangerous situation unfolding right at America's doorstep. Let's start by examining the immediate fallout from El Mayo's arrest. As of now, at least 10 murders in Mexico have been directly linked to this high-profile capture. But make no mistake, this is likely just the beginning of a potentially massive wave of violence. The Sinaloa Cartel, known for its brutal tactics and far-reaching influence, is currently targeting anyone they suspect played a role in El Mayo's capture. This includes not only law enforcement officials, but also civilians who might be perceived as informants or collaborators. The situation is so volatile that authorities on both sides of the border are on high alert. U.S. officials are warning American citizens to remain vigilant, especially those living in or traveling to border regions. The fear is that this violence could quickly escalate and potentially spill over into U.S. territory. Amidst this chaos, Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador is calling for calm. Let's listen to what he had to say.
Que no es el camino a la violencia.
Violence is not the way. I'm confident that there won't be confrontations. I wish for that. I just ask that everyone behave responsibly and bet on peace.
While the president's words aim to soothe tensions, the reality on the ground paints a different picture. Security officials aren't sharing the president's optimism. Public Safety Director Gilberto Loya highlighted the ambiguity surrounding El Mayo's arrest. Was it a surrender or an internal betrayal? The answer could determine the Sinaloa Cartel's response.
Why prepare? Because it's not clear what happened. There could be a different response from criminal groups if it was a surrender or a betrayal between cells of the same cartel.
Loya's statement highlights a crucial point. The circumstances surrounding El Mayo's arrest are still shrouded in mystery. Was it a planned operation by law enforcement, a surrender, or perhaps, even more concerning, was it the result of internal betrayal within the cartel itself? The answer to these questions could significantly influence the Sinaloa Cartel's response. If they perceive El Mayo's capture as a betrayal from within, we could see not only external violence against authorities and civilians, but also a brutal internal purge within the cartel ranks. To truly understand the gravity of this situation and why the retaliation has been so fierce, we need to take a closer look at the man at the center of it all, Ismael El Mayo Zambada. El Mayo has been at the helm of one of the world's most powerful criminal organizations for decades. His control over drug trafficking routes, primarily for fentanyl and methamphetamine, made him a top target for U.S. law enforcement. Unlike some of his more flamboyant counterparts, El Mayo has always preferred to operate in the shadows, earning him the nickname The Ghost. His ability to evade capture for so long only added to his mystique within the criminal underworld. Along with the infamous Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, El Mayo co-founded the Sinaloa Cartel, Together, they built a multi-billion-dollar drug empire, smuggling narcotics across the globe with an efficiency that rivaled major corporations. Their operation wasn't just about drugs, it was a complex network involving money laundering, arms trafficking, and corruption at the highest levels of government. Now, with El Mayo behind bars, the future of this criminal empire hangs in the balance. Let's take a look at what U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland had to say about this significant arrest.
Last year, I said that the Justice Department would never stop working to hold accountable those who are responsible for the fentanyl epidemic. On Thursday, the Justice Department took into custody in El Paso 2 more alleged leaders of the Sinaloa Cartel.
While El Mayo has pleaded not guilty to various drug trafficking charges, his arrest marks a major victory for law enforcement on both sides of the border. But as he sits behind bars awaiting trial, the violence outside continues to escalate. It is worth noting that this isn't El Mayo's first run-in with the law. He's managed to evade capture for decades, earning him the nickname The Ghost. But this time could be different. The arrest of a figure as influential as El Mayo sends shockwaves through criminal networks. Many cartel members view his capture as a betrayal. The Sinaloa Cartel isn't a stranger to using brutal force in retaliation for arrests. The world still remembers the chaos that erupted when Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, El Mayo's partner and the cartel's most famous face, was recaptured in 2016. The aftermath was nothing short of brutal. The Sinaloa Cartel unleashed a wave of violence across Mexico, targeting law enforcement officials and anyone they suspected of aiding in the capture. Entire towns became war zones, streets were blocked off, vehicles were set ablaze, and civilians found themselves caught in the crossfire. The message was clear. The Sinaloa Cartel was willing to go to extreme lengths to demonstrate its power and seek revenge. But perhaps an even more relevant example is the response of Los Chapitos, the sons of El Chapo, to their father's arrest. They took control of significant portions of the cartel's operations and showed they were just as ruthless, if not more so, than their father. In 2019, following the arrest of Ovidio Guzman, one of El Chapo's sons, the city of Culiacan was transformed into a battlefield. Cartel members overwhelmed military forces, freed prisoners, and caused widespread panic. The violence was so intense that the Mexican government eventually ordered Ovidio's release to prevent further bloodshed. This historical precedent raises serious concerns about what might follow El Mayo's arrest. The Sinaloa Cartel has consistently shown that it's willing to unleash unprecedented levels of violence to protect its interests and intimidate both authorities and civilians. Now, with at least 10 murders already linked to El Mayo's capture, we may be seeing the beginning of a similar, or potentially worse, wave of violence. The cartel is sending a clear message. They will not tolerate any perceived betrayal or cooperation with law enforcement. The Sinaloa Cartel isn't a stranger to using brutal force in retaliation for arrests. The world remembers how Los Chapitos, the sons of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, responded to their father's arrest by turning Sinaloa towns into war zones. They blocked roads, killed officers, and left the streets drenched in blood. So, are we looking at a repeat of 2016? Here's what could happen. Internal power struggle. With El Mayo potentially out of the picture, we could see rival factions within the Sinaloa Cartel fight for control. This internal conflict could lead to increased violence, not just against authorities, but between cartel members themselves. Such a power vacuum could destabilize the entire region and lead to unpredictable outbursts of violence. Increased violence. We've already seen targeted killings, but this violence could escalate and impact more innocent civilians. The cartel might increase its intimidation tactics, targeting anyone they perceive as a potential threat or informant. This could lead to a reign of terror in certain areas, with civilians caught in the middle of this dangerous power play. Corruption and infiltration. Cartels often bribe officials to maintain their operations. This could increase corruption and threaten the rule of law in Mexico. Attacks on law enforcement. History has shown us that the Sinaloa Cartel is not afraid to confront law enforcement directly. We could see an increase in attacks on police stations, military outposts, and even government buildings. This not only poses a direct threat to security forces, but also undermines the rule of law in affected areas. These are just some potential scenarios, and the reality could involve a combination of these or unfold in ways we haven't anticipated. What's clear is that the situation is highly volatile and could escalate rapidly. The uncertainty surrounding El Mayo's capture raises tensions within the cartel itself. Some suspect betrayal, and they are willing to kill anyone they deem responsible. Now, let's address the question that's on everyone's mind. How could this escalating violence in Mexico impact the United States? The Sinaloa Cartel's influence doesn't stop at the US-Mexico border. Over the years, they've established a significant presence in many US cities, particularly those near the border and major distribution hubs. The capture of two high-ranking leaders in El Paso, as mentioned by Attorney General Garland, is a stark reminder of how deep their operations run on US soil. The arrest of El Mayo could have several potential impacts on the United States. First, there may be an increase in drug trafficking as the cartel seeks to take advantage of the ensuing chaos, potentially flooding US streets with dangerous drugs like fentanyl. Additionally, cities near the Mexican border, such as El Paso, San Diego, and Tucson, might experience a rise in cartel-related violence, though likely on a smaller scale than in Mexico. This could strain US law enforcement agencies, especially those working to prevent spillover violence and intercept drug shipments. Economically, increased violence could disrupt cross-border trade and tourism, affecting local economies in border states. In a worst-case scenario, widespread violence in northern Mexico might lead to an influx of refugees seeking safety in the US, further straining immigration systems. Lastly, the destabilization in northern Mexico could create openings for other criminal organizations or even terrorist groups, raising broader national security concerns. With a potential rise in violence along the border, U.S. citizens living near or traveling to Mexico should exercise caution, taking advantage of helpful resources such as U.S. State Department travel advisories. Check for specific advisories for Mexican states you might be visiting. CBP, Customs and Border Protection, website. Stay updated on border crossing procedures and potential delays. It's important to note that while the threat of spillover is real, the U.S. has significantly stronger security measures than Mexico. However, the cartel's reach into border towns and cities like El Paso, Tucson, and San Diego could still put American lives at risk. Historically, cartel-related violence has remained contained to Mexico, but there have been instances where Americans were caught in the crossfire. The surge in fentanyl trafficking, orchestrated by the Sinaloa Cartel, is a silent form of violence that's already taking thousands of lives in the U.S. Remember, staying informed is key to staying safe. Looking back at previous cartel arrests, we see a clear pattern of violent retaliation. In 2019, following the arrest of Ovidio Guzman, son of El Chapo, the Sinaloa Cartel transformed the city of Culiacan into a battlefield. Military forces were overrun, and civilians were trapped in the chaos. History may be repeating itself. With El Mayo's capture, we may be facing a new wave of deadly cartel violence. As we wrap up our discussion, let's consider the broader implications of this unfolding crisis and what it might mean for the future of Mexico and the United States. The arrest of El Mayo Zambada marks a significant victory in the war against drug cartels, but it also opens up a Pandora's box of potential consequences. The power vacuum left by his absence could lead to a prolonged period of instability and violence as various factions within and outside the Sinaloa Cartel vie for control. For Mexico, the immediate challenge is clear. Can authorities quell this violence before it spirals out of control? President López Obrador's administration faces a crucial test. Their response in the coming weeks could determine whether Mexico can turn the tide against cartel violence or whether it will be plunged into another dark chapter of its drug war. For the United States, this situation presents both challenges and opportunities. On one hand, the disruption of the Sinaloa Cartel's leadership could temporarily weaken their operations, potentially reducing the flow of drugs across the border. On the other hand, the ensuing chaos could make the border region more volatile and more challenging to control. For now, all we can do is watch and prepare. The fallout from El Mayo's capture could be devastating, not just for Mexico, but for America. That's it for today, folks. Please stay tuned for updates as we continue tracking developments in this ongoing crisis. Will El Mayo's arrest help usher in some much-needed change? Feel free to share your opinion in the comments section below so we can keep this conversation going. Also, if you've enjoyed this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and to subscribe if you haven't already. Until next time, stay safe.